welcome to a deep dive.
Hmm?
You've given us some, well, incredibly rich material today.
Rich and pretty wild, honestly.
Exactly. We are plunging headfirst into this sprawling, really complex literary text. It's set in a provincial town that just feels like it's constantly about to boil over.
Mm-hmm. It's absolutely packed, isn't it? You've got these interwoven stories, some truly unforgettable, kind of eccentric characters.
Right. And underneath it all, this palpable sense of brewing social and ideological turmoil.
It really is a world unto itself. And our goal for you in this deep dive is, well, to try and cut through some of that density.
Yeah, untangle things a bit.
We want to help you get a handle on the key players, make sense of the, often shocking and surprising events that just erupt.
Yeah.
And really grasp the potent, sometimes, frankly, terrifying underlying ideas that seem to be driving everything towards, well, chaos.
Exactly. Think of this as your shortcut. We've been kind of living with this material, pulling out the essential threads.
Hopefully saving you some time.
Right, so you can get those aha moments without needing, hundreds and hundreds of pages under your belt.
So picture this town for us.
Okay, so it's a place where gossip and petty personal dramas are basically front-page news.
Mm-hmm.
But right beneath that surface, you've got these radical ideas and revolutionary plots just secretly fermenting.
And colliding with everyday life. It's quite the powder keg.
It really is.
And the characters are, well, they're the fuses, the matches, sometimes the dynamite itself.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Let's jump right in then by getting to know some of these unforgettable inhabitants.
Okay.
We absolutely have to start with Stepan Trofimovitch Verkhovensky. He's a longtime fixture in this town, deeply connected to the prominent and powerful Varvara Petrovna.
Ah, Stepan Trofimovitch. He's such a walking contradiction.
Isn't he?
He's introduced as this well-known man, former professor or lecturer.
Yeah.
Status.
Right. But almost immediately you see the other side. He's described as pathetic.
Frivolous, even dismissed as an old woman. It's quite cutting.
And his anxieties about his reputation are almost, well, comical if they weren't so sad. Remember that early rumor about him in the Fourier translation?
Oh, yeah, or his poem being seized. These external pressures just seem to amplify all his internal drama. And he makes these sort of futile attempts at independence trying odd jobs.
Right, like working in a shop for a bit.
Exactly. But he's always tethered, isn't he? Especially financially, to Varvara Petrovna.
Their relationship. It's complex.
Oh, it's built on decades of, well, cohabitation and dependence, really. Yet she makes these sudden, almost cruel demands on him.
Like proposing he marry Dasha, her ward, just out of the blue.
It's such a bizarre power dynamic. Fascinating to watch unfold.
And his final journey, leaving the town, meeting Sofia Matveyevna, it feels like this desperate search for meaning, doesn't it?
It really does. He has that really poignant realization, j'ai menti toute ma vie. I've lied my whole life. And then talks about wanting to prêcher l'évangile, to preach the gospel.
It's this late-stage shift, trying to find some kind of truth or maybe absolution after a life that felt built on posturing.
Definitely. And that final, quite emotional meeting with Varvara Petrovna right before his death, it just underscores the deep, complex bond that existed despite all that dysfunction.
Speaking of Varvara Petrovna, she's such a force of nature in this world. The wealthy matriarch of the Stavrogin family. Strong-willed, imperious.
She's physically striking, too, isn't she? Described as a tall, yellow, bony woman with an extremely long face, suggestive of a horse. Quite a description.
It really is. But she's not just physically imposing. She's so socially ambitious, dreaming of influencing the entire province.
And while she's often imperious, you do get glimpses of her capacity for warmth, which makes her more complex than just a tyrant.
Yeah, she's not one note. Her relationship with Stepan Trofimovitch is obviously central, defining both their lives through years of, well, entanglement and her financial control.
That sudden, inexplicable demand he marry Dasha is just a perfect example of her sort of capricious nature.
Right. But then, that final scene with Stepan shows there was undeniable depth of feeling there, somewhere beneath the surface.
Exactly. And her concerns extend, most notably, of course, to her son, Nikolay, but also to Liza. She seems to see Liza as a problem, doesn't she? Even calling her a mad girl.
Which brings us neatly to Nikolay Vsevolodovich Stavrogin, Varvara Petrovna's son, and really the central mystery of the whole story.
He's described with this really unsettling combination of Striking beauty, red in his cheeks, too bright and clear, teeth like pearls, lips like coral.
Almost perfect.
Almost too perfect, yet simultaneously there's something repellent about him. His face is like a mask.
And beneath that appearance, there's this disturbing, almost unnatural physical strength mentioned.
Yeah. When he first returns to the town, he seems sort of listless, quiet, rather morose.
But he immediately starts disrupting things, causing scandal, nipping a colonel's ear. I mean,
it's just one example of his bizarre, totally unpredictable behavior.
and here's where one of the most shocking secrets comes out, right? Crucial to everything that follows.
The secret marriage. Years ago, he secretly married Maria Timofyevna Lebyadkin.
And the reason? Why did he do it?
Get this. After a drunken dinner? For a bet.
A bet. That single detail is horrifyingly casual. It illuminates so much about his internal state, or maybe the lack of one.
It shows this deep-seated indifference, maybe, or this constant search for extremity.
His mysterious connections are hinted at, too. And later, his own chilling reflections. He talks about seeking a burden.
Or seeing phantoms that propose actions like murder. It's deeply unsettling.
Even his duel with Gaganov, his explanation is bizarre.
Yeah, he explicitly states he was basically offering himself up as a target, trying to get rid of Gaganov not by killing him, but by being the one targeted.
It reinforces that idea of seeking a burden, right? Maybe some external weight to give his empty life some kind of substance.
Feels like it. He's like this void at the center of the narrative, attracting and amplifying the intensity of everyone else around him.
Which leads us directly to Pyotr Stepanovitch Verkhovinsky, Stepan Trofimovitch's son.
Wah, yes. If Stavrogin is the void, Pyotr is the terrifying engine. He's the driving force behind all the revolutionary activity.
He's a young man, about 27, outwardly respectable, decently dressed, well-made, slender and dark.
But with a pale, rather muddy-colored face, and that slightly unsettling, jerky way of speaking.
And his father's perception of him is just hilariously, tragically naive.
Stepan Trofimovitch sees him as good, noble-hearted, very sensitive, though he does add, c'est un pauvre sire tout de même.
He's a poor fellow all the same. If only he knew.
The reality is chillingly different. Pyotr is a master manipulator, utterly ruthless.
He's the organizer, isn't he? Setting up these quintets.
Presenting himself as an emissary from some central committee, which he essentially admits later is just a fiction he created.
He understands the emotional pull of socialism for the younger generation, but his own methods are just cold, brutal, entirely cynical.
His interactions with Stavrogin are particularly revealing and deeply disturbing.
Yeah, he tells Stavrogin things like, "Without you, I am nothing."
I invented you abroad. It's this bizarre confession of parasitic dependence.
But also a chilling statement of his own power to shape others, or his belief in it.
And that line about using Shatov's blood as cement for the group, I mean, it just strips away any pretense of ideology.
It's pure, cold-blooded utility.
It really highlights his utter lack of human empathy when he's pursuing his goals.
Okay, so beyond these central figures, there are several other characters essential to understanding this world and the events that unfold.
Absolutely. There's Shatov. He's a former associate of both Stavrogin and Pyotr Stepanovitch.
Right, and he holds these incredibly fervent, almost mystical beliefs.
Yeah, that an atheist can't be a Russian. And only the Russian people are God-bearing, chosen by God. These ideas are intense, nationalistic, deeply spiritual for him.
He's clearly a man of conviction, which puts him in direct conflict with the others, particularly Pyotr.
Definitely. He received that blow from Stavrogin in the past, we learn, and while he was involved with the revolutionary group.
He decides he wants out.
Exactly. And that decision tragically seals his fate. The group sees him as a liability, someone who might inform.
So they sentence him to death. He's also, we should mention, Maria Timofyevna's brother.
Then there's Kirillov. Now, he's consumed by this single, extreme philosophical idea.
The idea that man must become God.
Precisely. By asserting his absolute will, specifically by daring to commit suicide. He believes this kills the deception of God and the fear of death.
He thinks this act will literally transform humanity, that man will be God.
But it seems born out of profound torment. He says, God has tormented me all my life.
And Pyotr Stepanovitch just ruthlessly exploits this conviction, doesn't he?
Completely. He plans to use Kirillov's suicide to provide false confessions, covering the group's crimes, the fire, the murders.
Especially Shatov's murder.
There's also Liza, Lizaveta Nikolaevna. She's described as a generous, passionate creature.
Connected to Stavrogin, of course. Her obstinate and ironical character seems to cause conflict.
Right. And she runs away possibly with Pyotr cynical assistance that's hinted at.
And meets a terrible death, tragically entangled in all the chaos.
We can't forget the Lebyadkins either. Maria Timofyevna, Stavrogin's secret, crippled wife.
Described as not quite right in her head, though she apparently had some education, often mocked.
Yet, despite her state, she seems to have these misgivings about Stavrogin, a kind of intuitive understanding, maybe?
She is murdered, along with her brother,
Captain Lebyadkin, Maria Timofyevna's brother, a poet of sorts.
who was basically trying to cash in on his sister's secret marriage, hoping for money from Stavrogin.
Yeah, a rather pathetic figure, really. Also murdered with his sister.
And finally, Yulia Mikhailovna, the governor's wife. She desperately wants to be the social arbiter of the province.
Which culminates in her organizing that disastrous fête we'll talk about.
She's characterized by her shallowness and lack of judgment.
Oh, completely. And Pyotr Stepanovitch sees her coming a mile away. He masterfully manipulates her.
Presents himself as fanatically devoted.
While secretly plotting behind her back, using her ambition for his own ends.
And her husband, von Lemke, the governor, equally out of his depth.
Totally. He indulges in literary peccadillos writing a novel, I think.
Yes. Constantly worried about public opinion, gets anonymous letters that drive him to distraction.
And even gets subjected to the indignity of a search after Stepan Trofimovitch's complaint. It's just chaos.
These characters really form the intricate, often fragile social web of this provincial world.
Okay, so with all these combustible elements, the characters, the complex relationships now in place, let's see how the events actually unfold and escalate into, well, outright chaos.
It seems to start with this persistent hum of underlying tension and rumors, doesn't it?
Definitely. The talk of an illegal conspiracy, the whispers about Stepan Trofimovitch, the seizure of his poem.
It creates this atmosphere of suspicion and paranoia that just permeates the town right from the beginning.
And interwoven with that, you have these intense personal dramas playing out.
Stepan Trofimovitch's agonizing dependence on Varvara Petrovna, his struggles with her, especially that bizarre marriage scheme she cooks up for him.
Right, and Liza's obvious internal turmoil, her fraught connection to Stavrogin.
You know, Stavrogin's own increasingly strange and disruptive behavior just fuels everything.
The duel between Stavrogin and Gaganov is such a stark example of this.
His explanation for it is just mind-bending.
That he was seeking a burden, making himself a target. It doesn't make rational sense, does it? But it's profoundly revealing about his distorted inner world.
His disconnection from normal human consequence.
Exactly. And this is where the revolutionary plot, really orchestrated by Pyotr Stepanovitch, takes hold and starts actively disrupting the town.
He's forming his quintets, presenting himself as this important emissary.
And their program is shockingly dark. It's not just about political change, it's about deliberately spreading cynicism, disbelief,
Generating scandals to undermine society's foundations.
and chillingly, using fires as a preeminently national method for causing upheaval.
You even see the friction within the group itself when some members act independently. Pyotr gets furious.
Oh yeah, when they take your own initiative. Because it disrupts his careful, cynical plan. He needs control.
All of this simmering tension and manipulation sort of culminates, in a way, at the fête.
Ah, the fête. Organized by the totally oblivious Yulia Mikhailovna. It's meant to be this display of provincial high society.
But it's described as absolutely absurd.
The high-ticket prices, the expectation of food that never appears during Karmazinov's excruciatingly dull reading.
Oh, see, that single word.
The required costumes. It's meant to be this unifying social event.
But it becomes this perfect stage for all the town's underlying tensions, resentments, and just outright chaos to spill out.
And the absurdity of the fête serves as this almost grotesque prelude to the real horror that follows, doesn't it?
Absolutely. The fire and the murders erupt right after the event collapses into chaos.
And they are immediately linked to figures like Fedka, the convict, and the general terrifying idea that a secret society is responsible.
The murders of the Lebyadkins are particularly significant here. Pyotr Stepanovitch later admits he helped Stavrogin,
That he arranged things.
and the motive is so revealing about Pyotr.
As the servant Fedka implies, Pyotr planned the murder specifically to implicate Stavrogin, to make him dependent on him.
But it backfires, doesn't it? It causes indignation in Stavrogin instead of gratitude or complicity.
It shows Pyotr's miscalculation of Stavrogin, perhaps. And there's the added layer of Fedka potentially being involved himself, and that quarrel over money stolen from Lebyadkin between him and Pyotr. It's messy.
Very messy. Then there's Shatov's fate. He returns home.
Finds his estranged wife Marie has arrived, unexpectedly.
And she's just given birth to his baby.
Yeah.
And he's desperately trying to find money for them.
Despite clearly stating he wants nothing more to do with the group, he's seen as a risk.
Because he intended to inform them, right? To expose them.
Exactly. His deeply held beliefs, his desire for just a simple, decent life, they're crushed by the brutal logic of the revolutionary cell.
The group murders him, coldly stated as having sentenced him to death.
Kirilov's suicide is perhaps the most tragic example of Pyotr's manipulation.
Taking this profound philosophical quest,
This tormented search for supreme freedom through suicide, and twisting it into a tool for the society.
he makes Kirillov sign false confessions for the fire and murders, including Shatov's.
Using his final act to cover their crimes. That final, eerie moment where Kirilov bites Pyotr as he approaches.
It's like this final, desperate, almost animalistic act of resistance against the manipulation. So disturbing.
Liza's story also ends tragically, caught in the crossfire.
Her terrible death after running away is just a devastating consequence of her connection to Stavrogin and the events he's entangled in.
Amidst all this death and destruction, Stepan Trofimovitch's end offers a different kind of note, perhaps.
His departure from town, his accidental meeting with Sofia Matveyevna, the Bible seller,
His final illness and journey lead to those poignant reflections, his admission of a life of lies, je mentis toute ma vie.
and his turn towards seeking truth, wanting to preach the gospel.
And that final, brief, emotional reconciliation with Varvara Petrovna before he dies. It feels like a moment of unexpected grace amidst all the unfolding horror.
In the immediate aftermath, Pyotr Stepanovitch just vanishes.
Slips away. And the rumors solidify the town's fears, the chilling reality that a secret society of murderers, incendiaries, and revolutionists did exist.
And Stavrogin's story concludes, leaving his own form of absence.
He writes that letter to Dasha asking her to be his nurse, which feels less like a practical request and more like a final gesture.
He leaves the town, and when Varvara Petrovna arrives, he is nowhere to be seen.
The letter definitely has this valedictory tone, suggesting a final, perhaps self-inflicted end to his tormented journey.
Okay, wow. We've journeyed through this incredibly tumultuous town and its inhabitants. Let's try to connect the dots a bit more deeply now. Why does all this resonate, and what can we really take away from this intense deep dive?
Well, I think what's so powerful and frankly disturbing is watching these abstract ideas collide so violently with real, messy human lives.
Right. Kirillov's absolute philosophical conviction.
Shatov's fervent, mystical nationalism, Pyotr's cold, calculating revolutionary program. These aren't just intellectual concepts in this story.
No, they become justification, motivation, weapons, really.
With terrifying real-world consequences.
And it's not just the ideas themselves, is it? It's also who adopts them and why. You see how deeply personal failings and twisted relationships fuel or interact with these ideological movements.
Exactly. Stepan Trofimovitch's vanity and dependence make him this sort of figurehead without substance, easily marginalized.
Varvara Petrovna's need for control creates these social rigidities that Pyotr just exploits brilliantly.
And Stavrogin, his profound indifference, his search for a burden, his nihilism, it doesn't just affect him.
No, it becomes a magnet almost. A vacuum that Pyotr needs, that he claims he invented abroad.
To give his own ruthlessness direction, Pyotr's chilling dependence on Stavrogin shows how personal psychological needs can absolutely latch onto and drive ideologies, twisting them into something, well, monstrous.
It makes you look at events like the fête differently too, doesn't it? What's intended is this seemingly harmless, maybe even beneficial societal gathering.
Is completely undermined, turned into a stage for absurdity, and then just completely overshadowed by arson and murder.
It illustrates how easily that social facade can crumble when malice and chaos are simmering just beneath the surface.
Facilitated by, the shallowness and lack of judgment from those supposedly in charge, like Yulia Mikhailovna.
The themes of deception and manipulation are just everywhere, aren't they? Primarily through Pyotr Stepanovitch, obviously.
But also in the secrets and masks worn by others, like Stavrogin especially. It forces you to grapple with that constant struggle. How do you discern truth from lies?
Especially in a world where people are actively manipulating reality for power or ideological ends. What happens when belief itself becomes just another tool or a weapon?
It truly is a powerful and, unsettling portrait of a society right on the edge, where these volatile, radical ideas meet deeply flawed human nature.
And the result feels almost inevitable: tragedy.
We've covered this incredibly complex web of characters, their twisted relationships, and the horrifying events they ultimately precipitate.
Well, I think the core insight, if there is one, is how these abstract, intense ideologies, when they become divorced from human reality, from compassion, from truth.
They can lead to profound destruction and tragic outcomes for pretty much everyone involved.
So here's something maybe to leave you with, something to keep pondering. In a world like ours, saturated with overwhelming information, conflicting ideas, deliberate deception, how do you navigate it?
How do you discern truth from manipulation?
And what is the real human cost? Not just to these grand ideological struggles or seeking supreme freedom in radical acts like Kirillov.
But even of something as internal and ambiguous as Stavrogin's search for a burden, what does that cost?
Consider this story's implicit question, maybe. What happens when abstract ideologies take hold, intensely and fervently?
But lack any grounding in empathy in human reality or in genuine compassion? What are the consequences then?